The story of Soviet involvement in the Ogaden War of 1977 to 1978 is one of the lesser-known but deeply consequential chapters of the Cold War, where ideology, geography, and covert military power converged in the arid plains of the Horn of Africa. The conflict itself erupted between Somalia and Ethiopia over the Ogaden region, a vast, sparsely populated desert inhabited largely by ethnic Somalis. At the center of this geopolitical drama stood the Soviet Union, which would execute a dramatic policy reversal that transformed the war's outcome. Behind the official deployments of Cuban troops and Soviet advisors, there are persistent accounts and historical analyses suggesting the involvement of elite Soviet special forces, often associated with the Spetsnaz, in clandestine missions that helped reshape the battlefield. Initially, Somalia, under the leadership of Syed Barre, was aligned with the Soviet Union. Barre's regime promoted scientific socialism, which aligned ideologically with Moscow. Throughout the early 1970s, the Soviets supplied Somalia with arms, trained its military, and developed strategic infrastructure such as the Berbera naval base. However, the regional balance began to shift after a revolutionary upheaval in Ethiopia. In 1974, Emperor Haile Selassie was overthrown and replaced by a Marxist-Leninist military junta known as the Derg, led by Mengistu Haile Mariam. This ideological alignment with Moscow presented the Soviets with a strategic dilemma. Both Somalia and Ethiopia were now potential allies, but their territorial dispute made dual support impossible. When Somalia launched a full-scale invasion of the Ogaden in July 1977, seeking to unify Somali-inhabited territories under one flag, the Soviets were forced to choose. Initially, Somali forces made rapid gains, capturing up to 90% of the Ogaden region. Their military, well equipped with Soviet weaponry, overwhelmed Ethiopian defenses, which were disorganized in the aftermath of the revolution. However, Moscow soon shifted its allegiance decisively toward Ethiopia, calculating that Ethiopia's larger population, strategic location, and ideological commitment made it a more valuable long-term ally. This pivot marked one of the most dramatic realignments of the Cold War. The Soviets halted aid to Somalia and began an enormous airlift of weapons and personnel into Ethiopia. This operation included tanks, artillery, MiG fighter jets, and thousands of military advisors. Alongside Soviet personnel came approximately 15,000 Cuban troops, deployed under the leadership of Fidel Castro. While much of this intervention was overt, the more discreet component involved highly trained Soviet operatives who specialized in reconnaissance, sabotage, and tactical coordination, roles typically associated with Spetsnaz units. Though official Soviet records remain limited or classified, various accounts suggest that these special forces operated in small, highly mobile teams embedded within Ethiopian units. Their primary function was not to engage in large-scale combat, but to enhance the effectiveness of Ethiopian operations. This included forward reconnaissance behind Somali lines, identifying weak points in armored formations, and directing artillery and airstrikes with precision. In the harsh terrain of the Ogaden, characterized by extreme heat, limited water sources, and vast open spaces, such intelligence was invaluable. One of the defining features of Soviet involvement was the integration of combined arms tactics. Soviet advisors trained Ethiopian forces to coordinate infantry, armor, and air power in ways that Somali forces, despite their initial success, struggled to counter. Spetsnaz operatives likely played a key role in this transformation by conducting deep reconnaissance missions that mapped Somali supply routes and logistical hubs. These missions enabled Ethiopian and Cuban forces to disrupt Somali lines of communication, isolate forward units, and gradually reclaim lost territory. The turning point of the war came in early 1978, when Ethiopian and Cuban forces launched a coordinated counteroffensive. Battles such as the recapture of Jijiga demonstrated the effectiveness of Soviet planning and support. Somali forces, stretched thin and increasingly isolated, began to retreat. By March 1978, Somalia had withdrawn its troops from the Ogaden, marking a decisive victory for Ethiopia. The role of covert Soviet operatives in this victory, while not fully documented, is widely inferred from the operational sophistication displayed during the counteroffensive. The ability to execute synchronized attacks across multiple fronts, maintain supply lines in a hostile environment, and exploit enemy weaknesses suggests a level of planning and intelligence consistent with elite military involvement. Spetsnaz units, trained in unconventional warfare, would have been ideally suited for such tasks, particularly in a theater where conventional front lines were fluid and often indistinct. Beyond the battlefield, the Soviet intervention had significant geopolitical implications. It solidified Ethiopia's position as a key Soviet ally in Africa and marked the decline of Soviet-Somali relations. Syed Barre, feeling betrayed, expelled Soviet advisors and turned to the United States for support, illustrating the fluid and often pragmatic nature of Cold War alliances. For the Soviets, the success in the Ogaden demonstrated their ability to project power far beyond their borders and influence regional conflicts through a combination of overt and covert means. The Ogaden War also highlighted the importance of proxy warfare during the Cold War. While the United States and the Soviet Union avoided direct confrontation, they frequently supported opposing sides in regional conflicts, using local forces as instruments of broader strategic competition. In this context, the deployment of elite units like Spetsnaz represented a way to exert influence without escalating to open superpower conflict. In retrospect, the red sands of the Ogaden serve as a metaphor for both the physical environment and the ideological struggle that defined the conflict. The desert landscape, unforgiving and vast, mirrored the harsh realities of Cold War geopolitics, where alliances could shift rapidly and outcomes were often determined by decisions made thousands of miles away. The Soviet intervention, including its covert dimensions, was instrumental in shaping the war's outcome and preserving a socialist foothold in the Horn of Africa. While the full extent of Spetsnaz involvement may never be completely revealed, the available evidence points to a sophisticated and multifaceted operation that combined conventional military support with specialized, clandestine capabilities. This blend of strategy and secrecy underscores the complexity of the Ogaden War and its place within the broader narrative of the Cold War.